The past year has brought so many events and passions into her life that they are unforgettable. Lilia married Leonid, an ordinary village guy, when she turned 23. In her husband's family, they live by their own customs and rules. One of these rules is that the daughter-in-law is a person whose opinions and desires are not considered by anyone. She must work in her husband's house and not contradict her mother-in-law and other relatives, keeping her opinions on any matter to herself. Leonid warned Lilia about this right when they started dating. "Don't worry. I will always be on your side," he assured her. "I will try to protect you from everything." Lilia listened without giving much importance to his words. Although the news made her wary, she was reassured by the fact that they would live in the city and visit his parents in the village only occasionally. Thus, Leonid's warnings did not particularly bother her. Lilia's parents died early, and she was raised by her grandmother, an honored teacher. Lilia is a city girl, but not afraid of work. She knows and loves doing all the housework. Their apartment was often filled with children who were treated to sweets. Her grandmother taught her order and culinary skills. Leonid proposed, and she accepted. The groom took Lilia to meet his parents. They were greeted by his future father-in-law and mother-in-law, his sister-in-law and her husband, and Vladimir, Leonid's younger brother. Everyone was very nice and friendly. After dinner, Lilia offered to clear the table and wash the dishes. Her future mother-in-law said there was no need to wash the dishes on the first day, joking that there would be plenty of time to cook and clean in the future. Lilia didn't pay much attention to her words. The next morning, Lilia woke up very early, even though she is a night owl and likes to sleep until noon. But here, Lilia remembered Leonid's words that she couldn't sleep long and needed to help in the kitchen. She washed up and went straight to the kitchen, where her mother-in-law was already making breakfast. She offered to help. Her future mother-in-law was delighted. Sitting at the table, she praised her son. "Well done, son. You've made a good choice," his mother praised. "Your Lilia is great. She got up early and helped me with breakfast." That same day, they went to the forest to pick berries. After a long walk in the forest, they had a picnic, grilled kebabs, and had fun getting to know each other better. Lilia tried to please her future relatives and succeeded. The relatives seemed very nice and friendly. Why did Leonid say such things to her? She wondered, looking at their friendly faces. 2 months later, they got married. The next visit to her husband's parents' house was as a daughter-in-law. They arrived late in the evening. Her mother-in-law warmly welcomed them and served dinner. Afterward, Lilia cleared the table and washed the dishes. This time, it was taken for granted. In the morning, her mother-in-law went to work. When the newlyweds woke up, no one was home. Lilia went to the kitchen and saw frozen chicken on the table. "Well, here we go," said her husband. "Hold on." That day, her husband's brother, sister with her husband, and child were expected to visit. Lilia realized she needed to prepare lunch for everyone. The frozen chicken on the table was a hint from her mother-in-law that she was expected to cook lunch. After breakfast, Lilia started preparing lunch. She put the broth on to boil, peeled potatoes, cabbage, and carrots. She felt anxious and uncomfortable. She was surprised to be in someone else's house, not knowing where anything was, and having to feed the entire family without any warning. She found everything with difficulty. Her grandmother had passed away 4 years ago, and she didn't remember her parents. She had always dreamed of having a large, friendly family. Her grandmother taught her to be kind and friendly. Lilia was afraid of doing something wrong or not having enough time to cook. She really wanted to befriend everyone. Lunch was ready. By the time everyone returned, the table was set. "Very tasty," praised her mother-in-law. Lilia sighed with relief and looked at her husband. After lunch, everyone left a mountain of dishes and went outside. The men went to the yard, where a new garage was being built. Lilia, after washing the dishes, returned to the room where her mother-in-law and sister-in-law were talking. She didn't know what to do with herself. She felt like an outsider. The women were talking, completely ignoring Lilia. Suddenly, her mother-in-law asked her what they would cook for dinner. Not knowing what to do, she was confused and shrugged her shoulders. Maybe cutlets and buckwheat, she suggested to her mother-in-law, who then left the room. Meanwhile, her sister-in-law was looking at her phone. Lilia sat with her sister-in-law but felt like an empty space. She went to the kitchen to help her mother-in-law with dinner. But no one was there. She was surprised. On the table was a piece of frozen meat and a bag of buckwheat. Her mother-in-law had gone to visit a friend. Her sister-in-law was watching a movie. Lilia was taken aback. Soon everyone would be coming home, and it seemed she was expected to take care of dinner. She didn't understand why they behaved this way, but didn't want to argue. Gathering her courage, she started making cutlets. Her mother-in-law returned just in time for dinner. "Oh, how wonderful," she smiled, entering the kitchen. "Everything is ready." Her sister-in-law continued watching the movie and never once came to the kitchen to help. The men returned home. Her father-in-law sternly asked if dinner was ready. Glancing at his son and daughter-in-law. "Of course it's ready," reported her mother-in-law. After dinner, everyone left the kitchen together. Lilia cleared the table, feeling a lump in her throat, barely holding back tears. She felt hurt. "We just got married, and they're already treating me like a servant," she thought. "I have to cook and serve everyone, even though this isn't my home. What will happen next? What should I do?" In the morning, Lilia again got up early and helped her mother-in-law make breakfast. Her sister-in-law sat in the kitchen with her mobile phone, taking no part at all. During the few days the newlyweds spent at her parents'-in-law's house, Lilia became physically and emotionally exhausted. She rode in the car silently, her head spinning with Leonid's words from "before the wedding." She didn't understand how to behave. She had always thought helping elders at home was normal, but here she was made into a servant. They didn't talk to her as an equal, ignoring everything she said as if she were talking to herself. Their looks, filled with condescending politeness, drove her mad. "What should I do?" she pondered. "Should I accept the role of a submissive daughter-in-law they can command, or show them that I am a person too? I can't allow myself to be humiliated." But Leonid, after all, they are his parents. 3 days later, her husband went on a business trip. Lilia was doing household chores when the phone rang. "Hi," exclaimed her sister-in-law. "What are you doing? Are you home?" "Hello," Lilia was surprised. Her sister-in-law hadn't spoken to her once during their stay at her in-laws' house, and now she was suddenly interested in her affairs. "My husband, friends, and I came to stroll around the city. We'll be at your place for lunch in about 30 minutes, she said. "Oh, my phone is dying. Bye." Lilia didn't have time to respond before the call ended. She was so shocked that she stood motionless for a moment. How can this be? Lilia wondered. They came without warning, and with friends for lunch. What if nothing is prepared? And why should I feed people I don't even know? She didn't even ask for permission. Lilia sighed and headed to the kitchen. Fortunately, there was already lunch prepared, it just needed to be heated. Half an hour later, the guests arrived, her sister-in-law with her husband and another couple Lilia had never seen before. The guests ate, praising the hostess's cooking skills. Her sister-in-law acted as if she were in a restaurant, boldly directing Lilia on what to bring. Right after eating, the guests left. "Not only did I constantly cook and serve everyone at my in-laws' house," Lilia fumed, but now I have to host them at my own home whenever they want. Why don't they have lunch at a cafe or restaurant? I hope this was a one-time occurrence, but she was wrong. One evening, after coming home from work, the couple had dinner and were about to watch a movie when the doorbell rang. Standing at the door were her sister-in-law and her husband. Surprise, she waved her hands. We're staying over tonight. Leonid and Lilia exchanged confused glances, surprised. This time, they hadn't even been warned. Lilia invited them in and sat with them at the table. Her husband grumbled angrily and went to bed. The evening was ruined. Leonid did not hide his displeasure at their visit. In the morning, Lilia made breakfast and fed the guests. Leonid didn't come out for breakfast. Later, they discussed the awkward situation at length. Leonid called his mother and voiced all their complaints. "Mom, this is unacceptable. He's furious, my sister has really crossed the line. She shows up unannounced and brings friends along, expecting to be fed and catered to as if it's her own home. No, this is my home. I won't allow myself or Lily to be treated this way anymore. Enough. My apartment isn't a hotel or restaurant to entertain guests whenever they feel like it." His mother listened to her son and promised to talk to her daughter. A few days later, his mother-in-law called him. "Leonid, your father and I are planning to visit you. Can we come over?" Leonid was surprised. His parents, who rarely visited the city, showed up at the young couple's apartment on the appointed day. Before sitting down to eat, his father-in-law declared, "Leonid, I need to have a serious talk with you." He glared sternly at his daughter-in-law. "I'm very upset about how you treat your relatives. It turns out you're not hospitable. You begrudge a slice of bread and a cup of tea to your sister. Why can't she visit? Why can't she stay overnight with you? Your family. Who else does she have?" Leonid tried to explain his side of the story, but his father wouldn't let him speak. "Don't interrupt me," his father shouted. "Let my daughter come to your place anytime and kick the door open. Your relatives, you should be in touch." He glanced at his daughter-in-law. "And you, son, you've changed since getting married. It's the influence of your stubborn wife. She's a stranger to us, but your sister is your flesh and blood. Don't you dare drive her out of our home. If you don't change your attitude toward us, it's your own fault. Your nasty wife will alienate you from us. Think, son, do you really need a wife like her? There are plenty of women in the world, you can find someone better than her." Lily trembled at what she heard. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Why? I only wanted what's best, but now everyone thinks I'm at fault." She listened in disbelief. Her father-in-law led his son into another room and continued their conversation. Her mother-in-law looked Lily over with a withering gaze and said, "It's a shame this isn't our apartment," she muttered, grinning crookedly. "I'd throw you and your junk out on your ear. You're not right for us. Leave our son alone and go. He's worth a better wife than you." Lily rolled her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Her head was spinning, a haze before her eyes. She lost consciousness. When Lily woke up in the hospital, her husband was sitting beside her. "Lily, forgive me," he said, gently stroking her hand. "I won't let anyone hurt you again. The doctor said you shouldn't worry. We're going to have a baby." Lily smiled and tears welled up. "It's the only good news I've had lately." "Don't worry," he kissed his wife. "Everything will be all right." He lowered his eyes and continued, "Though I had to cut ties with my parents and relatives. At least until they change their attitude towards you." Several months passed. There was a knock on the door. Lily hurried to open it, expecting her husband back from his business trip. Hello, darling, Leonid embraced his wife, now plump and pregnant. Why aren't you sleeping? What if I had been delayed? You and the baby need a routine, she kissed him, your father called yesterday. He's asking for forgiveness and wants to come talk. Leonid thought for a moment, walked to another room, and sat at the table. Could it be my parents have accepted you? He wondered aloud with a sigh. Maybe they've heard about the grandchild to come. Now, I must protect both you and our child. Okay, he said, smiling at his wife. I'll call my father tomorrow. Come on, feed me. I'm hungry. Hungry. Hungry.